to order for Thursday, January 26th, and ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For those that are participating via Zoom, when we get to the item that you want to speak on, please use the raise your hand feature, and the city clerk will turn on your microphone to speak at the appropriate time. Let the record show that all members of the city council are here this evening. The first item on the agenda is presentations, and I'll ask those from Sun Salutation Awareness Period to join me at the podium. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, Newark is a very multicultural community, and we want to make sure that we recognize all those organizations and community members that really bring a vibrance to our community, and this is certainly one of those organizations, and we're honored to recognize them today. So I'm going to go ahead and read the resolution, and then we'll present it to them. Whereas HSS is a voluntary nonprofit social and cultural organization celebrating its annual Health for Humanity Yogathon to create awareness about yoga and its advantages for the public. And whereas yoga is an ancient process of keeping the human mind and body in good health, and whereas a spiritual training is considered a part of physical training from ancient times, whereas Surya Namaskar, thank you, also known as Sun Salutation, is a special sequence of yoga postures that provide the key health benefits of yoga in a very succinct package. Now, therefore, I, Michael Hannon, Mayor of the City of Newark, on behalf of the Newark City Council, do hereby proclaim January 14th through the 29th as
Surya Namaskar, Sun Salutation Awareness Period.
Thank you. So please join me in congratulating these folks.
Namaste. My name is Sia Singh. I'm in 9th grade, and on behalf of the Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh, I wish to thank Mayor Hannon and the rest of Newark City Council for supporting our efforts to promote healthy living for the people of Newark through yoga. This is our 17th year celebrating the Health for Humanity Yogathon, and we are very happy to have the City of Newark's continued support year after year. Since its inception in 2007, participants from yoga centers, community organizations, schools, and colleges in 43 states across the country have actively taken part in this movement. Regardless of individual faiths and beliefs, enthusiasts have participated and collectively performed over 4 million Surya Namaskars. Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh is a 501c3 nonprofit socio-cultural volunteer organization that aims to instill and promote self-confidence, discipline, teamwork, and the spirit of selfless service through regular educational programs based on our Hindu philosophy. Through service activities and outreach programs, HSS fosters a sense of civic duty, responsibility, and volunteerism, especially among my generation. One of the main movements that HSS has initiated is Seva Diwali. Seva means service above self in Sanskrit. Seva Diwali, which usually happens every October and November, is a growing international movement to bring together communities, individuals, and organizations who believe in the importance of seva to collectively organize food and other essential drives during our Hindu festival of Diwali and support and uplift the vulnerable communities in our society. Over the past few years, we have collectively donated over 1 million pounds of food during our holiday season with over 200 partner organizations and over 2,000 volunteers nationwide. The Alameda County HSS chapters have recently donated almost 5,000 pounds of food to help our local shelters and communities. I'm very glad to have been able to personally participate in that initiative. My brothers, sisters, and I have been members of HSS for the past 6 years. Every Sunday, we attend HSS shakas or classes during which we play games together, hear stories about our culture and religion, and feel a sense of security with others in our community. I believe that the culture and sense of discipline and responsibility that I have gained from HSS have allowed me to stay mentally grounded, especially through the past 3 years. I will end with this. Every Sunday, at the end of every shaka, we say a prayer to end our time together. There is one line in the prayer that I wish to share with all of you today. The line is, Vishwa Dharma Prakashena Vishwa Shanti Pravartake. This line reminds us to use the laws of righteousness, what we call dharma, to promote peace for the whole world to live happily and harmoniously together as one family. Namaste.
Thank you. I'm going to invite my council colleagues down to take a group photograph with these folks, please.
You want to offer to, yeah, there you go. Should we stand in front of the podium?
Yeah, let's get in front of them.
Yeah.
Only in the ninth grade, can you believe that?
As my council member colleague Bucci said, it's so rewarding when you hear a ninth grader, speak on these issues, especially having come through the pandemic as we have. And a lot of the precepts that the Hindu religion professes, I think a lot of religions share those same precepts. And I think if we as a community continue to honor those, I think we'll be a better community than we are today. But again, thank you for coming today, and we're honored to recognize you. So thank you for that. The next item is public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on any item that's not on Zoom from the consent calendar.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. The consent calendar consists of the following items: approval of audited demands, approval of the January 12, 2023 minutes, acceptance of the annual comprehensive financial report for the period ending June 30, 2022. Would someone like to move the items to be approved as recommended by staff, with any item approved by resolution or ordinance being numbered consecutively, and that the reading of the title suffice for purposes of introduction or adoption of the ordinance? So moved by Councilmember Bucci, seconded by Councilmember Freitas. Please take a moment to vote when I get the voting ready. That item carries unanimously 5-0. One thing as a new mayor, when you take your time to kind of tally the votes, sometimes those votes can change. Unfortunately, we haven't had that happen yet. So I'm going to try to speed up the votes so we don't have that. There are no public hearings tonight. F1 is our new business. Adopt resolution initiation of proceedings for the formation of Area Improvement District Number 35 for the Lindsay Tract, providing preliminary approval. I thought I missed something. I got yourself. Preliminary approval of the engineer's report declaring intention to order formation of the assessment district and to levy and collect assessments, establishing property owner assistance program for city-sponsored assessment districts, and setting a public hearing date of March 23, 2023. My understanding is Vice Mayor Collazo may have to recuse herself. Vice Mayor?
Under the Political Reform Act, I have an economic conflict of interest in this item. I have real property interest and business interest. Source of income interest in the Mexico Tortilla Factory at 7015 Thornton Avenue, and rental properties at 7155, 7167, and 7179 Thornton Avenue, and rental property at 36805 Magnolia Street. So I will recuse myself from consideration of this item and will leave the room I will return after discussion.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. City Manager Benoon.
Yes, good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. I apologize for the graphics on the screen. Item F.
I wonder where that came from.
Yeah, well, you know, still a Raiders fan. Item F1 is initiation of proceedings for the possible formation of Area Improvement District 5. This is for the Lindsay Tract. If approved by the council this evening, this would set a public hearing date of March 23rd, 2023. Tonight, we have a presentation from city staff member, our assistant city engineer, Mr. Jason Amai, as well as a representative from the engineering firm who's been assisting with us on this project. We'll begin tonight with the assistant city engineer, Mr. Amai. You have the floor, sir.
Hold on. Sorry, we tested this before the meeting and it worked.
Let me come over and give you a hand.
Oh, nope.
It's not reading it.
We seem to operate really well before we hired all these IT people.
Nope. I pulled the wood from up there.
Did you do your IT training? All but one.
It'll pop up there when it goes live. There we go. Yeah, all right.
Third time, fifth time, sixth time. Apologize for that. So, sorry about that. So good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. Again, my name is Jason Imai. I am the Assistant City Engineer with Public Works Engineering Division and Project Manager for the Lindsay Tract Improvement Project. Tonight, staff will present to you results from a preliminary engineer's report analyzing the potential formation of Area Improvement District number 35, which, if approved, would partially fund construction of the Lindsay Tract roadway and green infrastructure improvements project. Now, I know most of you are very familiar with the project, but for the benefit of our newer council member and for those in attendance, I will provide first a brief history of the project. In August 2021, the first community open house event for the Lindsay Tract Improvement Project was held. That evening, city staff and the project team were available to present the conceptual design for the project, answer any questions, and receive feedback from the community. Based on the feedback received, the project team refined the conceptual design and presented it to the City Council for approval in September 2021. In July 2022, city staff and the project team held a second community workshop to present the preliminary results of an engineer's report studying the potential formation for an area improvement district to partially fund the construction of the Lindsay Tract improvements. Now, the primary objective of the project is to replace the severely worn roadway pavement and fix the flooding issues that are consistently seen within the neighborhood, examples of which can be seen in the photo at the top. The project will also replace or construct new concrete curb, sidewalk, and driveways, and install new green infrastructure improvements. Now, green infrastructure is simply another term for the stormwater treatment measures or bioretention landscape planters you see in the photo on the bottom left and in many shopping center parking lots around town. The purpose of these planters is to intercept and filter stormwater runoff to remove pollutants before the water reaches San Francisco Bay. The city's green infrastructure plan, adopted by council in September of 2019, actually identifies the Lindsay Track project as one of the city's required green infrastructure projects. Now, in February 2021, the city entered into a cooperative partnership with the Alameda County Water District to include the planned replacement of aging water mains with the Lindsay Track, within the Lindsay Track neighborhood with the project. Now, one of the primary benefits of the project improvements will be improved overall neighborhood aesthetics. The project will tear out all old and worn roadway pavement and replace it with brand new and smooth pavement surface. There will also be brand new sidewalk, driveways, and curb installed throughout the neighborhood, similar to the photo you see on the bottom right. And those new improvements will be designed to drain better and prevent the flooding that commonly occurs after heavy rain. New sidewalks, intersection improvements will also improve walkability throughout the neighborhood. And all of these improvements together should have a positive long-term effect on overall property values in the area. Now, this next slide is an excerpt from the conceptual plan approved by Council of September 2021 and can be used for later discussion if there are questions specific to any of the project improvements. This next table details anticipated project construction costs and funding sources. As shown, the total estimated project, construction cost for the project is $9.6 million. Of that, $4.26 million is attributable to roadway pavement, drainage, and green infrastructure improvements, the cost of which will be completely funded by the city. Construction of ACWD's water main replacement is estimated to cost a little over $3 million. And per the cooperative agreement, 100% of the costs associated with the water main replacement will be paid for by ACWD. The remaining costs are proposed to be funded, for the most part, through the formation of an Area Improvement District, or AID. This has been the traditional strategy used to help fund the construction of frontage improvements for all other original neighborhoods in the city. There are currently 34 other area improvement districts in Newark. Lindsay Track is only one of 3 remaining neighborhoods in Newark without traditional sidewalk, curb, and gutter. The other 2 being Birch Street and Arden Street. Similar to 34 other AIDs in Newark, property owners would be asked to fund construction of new curb, gutter, and sidewalk fronting their properties. Total estimated cost of these improvements is $1.945 million. As the city's consultant, Francisco and Associates, will explain in further detail, the city would fund 2% of this cost, with the Area Improvement District funding the remaining 98%. Now, in order to improve the existing drainage situation and prevent flooding or the road and the homes, sidewalk will have to be raised in several areas, creating the need to conform or match the new sidewalk to existing driveways or walkways on private property. These improvements will be constructed by the project and is proposed to be completely funded by the Area Improvement District. Cost of these improvements is approximately $421,000. In total, 76.4% of the anticipated construction costs will be funded by either the city or ACWD. The remaining 23.6% of anticipated project costs will be funded by the proposed Area Improvement District, which again will include construction of curb, sidewalk, and driveway improvements in front of individual properties. Next, I'd like to call to the podium and introduce to the council Mr. Ed Espinoza with Francisco and Associates. Mr. Espinoza is a registered professional civil engineer and has served as principal in charge, principal engineer, or project manager for the formation and administration of over 125 financing districts throughout the state of California. City contracted with Francisco and Associates to prepare an engineer's report studying the potential formation of Area Improvement District number 35. And Ed, I'll now turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you, Jason. Good evening, City Council. So the Lindsay Tract Area Improvement District number 35 is an assessment district which require that they be established on the basis of special and direct benefit to property. So we did perform a benefit analysis of all the improvements that are proposed to be funded through the assessment district, those being new curb, gutter, sidewalk, driveway, and walkway improvements, and determined that virtually all of the benefit of these improvements is attributed to the Lindsay Tract neighborhood or the Lindsay Tract parcels fronting George Avenue, Mulberry, Olive, Magnolia, as you see in the diagram on this slide. With that being said, that special and direct benefit was broken up into two categories. The first being the primary benefit assessment. And the primary benefit assessment, what that is, it's the assessment to the Lindsay Tract as a whole. Basically, all the parcels within the assessment district. And generally speaking, what those benefits are improved walkability, improved aesthetics, safety, and things of that nature, improved ingress and egress. And so the cost and the benefit associated with the primary benefit is spread evenly to all the single-family homes in the district, because again, was determined to be of benefit to the neighborhood as a whole. From there are the enhanced benefit assessments, which the enhanced benefit assessments are benefit above and beyond the primary. And what that is it's the benefit attributed to the blue parcels or the blue single-family home properties that you see on the diagram on the screen. And those homes, they directly abut the new curb, the new sidewalk, and also will have a new driveway and new walkway if applicable. So the benefit for enhanced, it's benefit to the individual properties themselves. Improved ingress and egress out of individual homes, an added aesthetic benefit because you have new improvements in front of your home. And so therefore, there's a need to assess an additional amount to those properties. The assessment is broken down into two components. The enhanced benefit assessment is broken down into two components. The first is the one for curb and sidewalk, which is assigned on a per linear foot basis. And what that assessment rate is $98.83 per linear foot. And for driveway and walkway, it's assigned to each parcel on a square footage basis because the conform needed the extent of new driveway and walkway, the depth can vary from parcel to parcel. Some are 4 feet in depth and some are 10, depending upon the length needed to meet grade to the new sidewalk. And so for that reason, the driveway and walkway are on a per square foot basis, and that assessment rate is $33.35. So next, we'll go over an example of what that assessment calculation looks like. So this particular parcel, it's a single-family home, which all the parcels all the properties within the Lindsay Tract are. But the parcel characteristics for this single-family home, it has 50 linear feet of new curb, or is proposed to have 50 linear feet of new curb and sidewalk, which you can see in yellow there, which is the most typical scenario in the Lindsay Tract. I believe about 2/3 or so of the parcels fall in this category. So it's got 50 linear feet of new curb and sidewalk. And then in the purple there, that area is the new driveway that's proposed, which it's 56 square feet. I believe this is the 4-foot conform scenario. So the 4 feet and the width is the 56 square feet of new driveway that's proposed. So with those parameters, the curb and sidewalk enhanced benefit assessment calculation is calculated as the 50 linear feet of frontage times the $98.83 per linear foot assessment rate, which results in a total of $4,941.50 for the curb and sidewalk component of the enhanced benefit. And then the driveway and walkway conform enhanced benefit calculation is derived by taking the 56 square feet times the $33.35 per square foot, which results in the amount of $1,867.60. So this particular parcel does not have any walkway. Some do. And in the cases where walkway is applicable, that square footage is most likely higher. And some properties have 2 driveways. So again, the driveway and walkway conform, that's solely based on the square footage that will be replaced. Then there's incidental and financing costs. These are expenses to form the district and also financing costs associated with the bonding process. And so those costs are assigned to each parcel based on pro rata share of construction or otherwise, pro rata share of your primary benefit and enhanced benefit. And so the total assessment calculation, what that looks like is you take your primary benefit assessment amount, which again is assigned to every parcel within the assessment district, of $7,789.37. You add the enhanced benefit for the curb and sidewalk, plus the driveway and walkway enhanced benefit assessment, plus the incidentals and financing, and we arrive at our total of just under $18,000 for this particular parcel. Thank you. So as you can tell by the example, the proposed assessments will vary from parcel to parcel depending upon the linear feet of new curb and sidewalk, depending upon how much square footage of new driveway, new walkway you'll have. So the assessments will vary. Property owners will have the option to pay off their entire assessment or a partial amount of their assessment up front and avoid added financing costs that are about approximately 15% or so. Whatever is not prepaid, the city is expected to issue bonds to finance the remaining principal amount, and bonds will be financed over a 30-year term and will be paid annually via the property tax bills. So in the same way that property owners pay their ad valorem property taxes, it's just an additional line item on the property tax bills and will be paid annually in that way. The annual assessments are estimated to range between $700 to $4,000 per parcel on the higher end, with an average of approximately $1,400. And that estimated annual assessment, it's all-inclusive. It includes the construction, the incidentals, the financing, the interest and associated with the bonds, and also the annual administration of the district. So that estimate there is what property owners would potentially be looking at in terms of the amount on their property tax bill. After bonds are issued and assessments are placed on property tax bills, property owners will still have the option at any time in the future to prepay the remaining principal. So 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, any time down the road where it's feasible or makes sense for them, they could always call the city and request to prepay the remaining principal on the bonds. And then similar to programs that have been offered to other assessment districts, as your assistant city manager mentioned, there's 34 of them. There has been a property owner payment assistance program that's been available, and that will be available for this district as well. And your assistant city manager will get into, or city engineer, sorry, will get into the details and the criteria associated with that program here in the next couple slides. The assessment district formation process. So the first step in the process is the analysis and the preparation of the engineer's report, which city staff is recommending city council preliminarily approve tonight as part of one of the council actions. The other council action for tonight is the adoption of the resolution of intention. And assuming that those things happen, the property owners can then reach out to the city and request an application for the property owner assistance program. Also, the required notices and ballots will be mailed to affected property owners. We tentatively have that scheduled for next Friday. The notices and ballots going out by next Friday. They need to be mailed to the affected property owners a minimum of 45 days prior to the public hearing, which is scheduled for March 23rd. That public hearing date is also the deadline for property owners to submit, withdraw, or change their ballot or their vote. And following the public input portion on that evening on March 23rd, we'll conduct the ballot tabulation, present the results to City Council. If a majority of property owners weighted by proposed assessment amount, meaning the property owners with the higher proposed assessment, their vote or their ballot is weighted more. So if a majority of property owners weighted by proposed assessment do not oppose the formation of the district, City Council can proceed with adopting the resolution of formation on that very same night and in effect form the district. Following the public hearing, a final statement of assessment will be mailed to all the property owners. And at that point in time, there's a 30-day cash collection period where property owners can choose to prepay their assessment in full or partially. Following that 30-day cash collection period, bonds will be issued for the remaining principal amount, and assessments are expected to be levied beginning in this upcoming fiscal year 23-24. So December of 2023 would be the first time property owners would be seeing the line item on their property tax bills. So with that, I'll turn it back over to your Assistant City Engineer, who will describe the Property Owner Assistance Program in detail. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ed. So similar to area improvement districts formed in the late 1990s for neighborhoods within the Old Town District of Newark, city staff recommends establishing a property owner assistance program to help alleviate the burden caused by assessments for certain qualified owner-occupied parcels. For qualifying applicants, payment of their assessment can be deferred interest-free until the property is sold or transferred. To qualify for a full deferment of their assessment, the property must be owner-occupied. At least one property owner must be 65 years or older or permanently disabled, or the total household income must be considered low income or below, as defined by the California State Housing and Urban Development for Alameda County. Now, to qualify for a partial deferment, the property must again be owner-occupied, and the assessment must be at least 25% more than the average assessment for the entire district. In this scenario, only the portion of the assessment above the average may be deferred. Now, I should note that the Property Owner Assistance Program being proposed could be made available to all future city-sponsored assessment districts and is not necessarily specific to Area Improvement District number 35. Moving on to next steps. If approved, the public hearing for the formation of Area Improvement District number 35 would be held at the regular City Council meeting scheduled for March 23rd. If at the public hearing a majority protest does not exist and the council orders the levying of the first annual assessments for AID number 35, construction of the Lindsay Track project would be advertised for bid in April. The award of a construction contract would be brought to City Council for consideration in early summer, with the construction starting shortly thereafter and anticipated completion by the end of 2023. Now with that, staff recommends that City Council preliminarily approve the engineer's report, declare the intent to order formation of the assessment district and levy and collect assessments, establish a property owner's assistance program for city-sponsored assessment districts, and set a public hearing date for March 23rd, 2023. Now with that, that concludes staff's presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have at this time.
Thank you. And before I open it up for the public to comment, I want to give my council colleagues an opportunity to ask any clarifying questions, not necessarily comment on the proposal, because we want to do that after we hear from the public. But if there are any clarifying questions that the council members have. Councilmember Bucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was mentioned that there was assistance for anybody considered low income under the California Housing and Urban Development for Alameda County. What's that number?
It's in your staff report, but the numbers.
That's fine, but not everybody here has that. That's why I asked.
No worries. So the number depends on the number of people in the household. It's not a single number. So for a single person household, the number is $76,750. That in order to be considered low income. For two-person household, it's $87,700. For three people, it's $98,650. For 4, it's 109,600. For 5, it's 118,400, and if it's a 6-person household, it's $127,150.
Okay.
Other comments? Clarifying? Yes, Councilmember Jorgens?
So if you could clarify a little more on the deferment. So for someone who would qualify for the deferment, what does that application process look like, starting from, someone who doesn't know about it, how do they learn about it? So if you could start there, what that application process might look like.
Well, when we do mail out the ballots, there will be an informational flyer that's attached with the ballots that it will be mailed to every single listed property owner within the boundaries of the district. And that flyer will have, again, an announcement of the potential property assistance, owner assistance program, I guess. It'll also be posted on the website. But in order to apply, you would simply download an application, fill it out. You do have to provide supporting evidence of any of the qualifications listed in the program. You submit it to city staff by a certain date. I believe it's mid-April. April 24th. And then city staff will review it and determine if whether they are eligible or not, and we would inform the property owner as such.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bucci?
Thank you. The estimated assessment for the curb and gutter sidewalk and the driveway, if that's our estimated assessment and this goes out to bid and curb and gutter comes back at 88 feet a linear foot and the driveways come back at $24 a linear foot, I assume that we would pass those savings on to the residents?
Yeah, so this, and you can feel free to jump in, but so the number that you see is the maximum allowed assessment. So we could assess lower if that's the case. But what we're setting tonight is the maximum amount that we'll be allowed to be assessed.
Okay, thank you.
I want to follow up on Councilmember Jorgens' question. Sometimes these forms can be complicated and difficult for people to understand and make sure that they fill it out completely so that their application is deemed complete in a timely manner. Will the applications be available in multiple languages?
That hasn't been determined yet, but that is a good suggestion, Mayor.
And then secondly, will we have, Mr. Benundu, will we have city staff that are available to assist a citizen through the application process should they desire that assistance?
I can't imagine we would have any concerns with doing something like that. Mr. Imai?
Yes, Public Works engineering staff will be available to help assist any property owner that would need assistance understanding the application process.
And as a result of the recent census information that we received for this particular neighborhood, because a lot of our neighborhoods in Newark are older neighborhoods, a lot of older residents, including myself, that live in these neighborhoods. Do we have a sense as to the composition of this neighborhood? Are we looking at a neighborhood that is predominantly seniors, low income, or anything of that nature, where we certainly want to encourage them to apply for deferment? It certainly would take the financial stress off their mind.
City staff looked at the 2020 census data for this track, and it's actually kind of applicable to this particular Lindsay track data. And you do have to consider that it has to be owner occupied, so renters, can't qualify. So some of the owners are not actually living in that track and wouldn't show up on the census data. But from the data available, we estimate that about 30 to 40% of the residents may qualify for one of the three full deferment.
And to your point, if I'm a renter living in the neighborhood, this has no financial impact on me other than maybe a landlord trying to pass on some of these costs. Would that be a correct statement?
Yes, the assessment would not be the responsibility of the renter. It shows up on the property owner's tax bill.
Yes, thank you for those clarifications. Would anybody in the audience like to speak on this matter?
Yeah, I do.
Yes, please come to the podium if you don't mind. And if you'd be so kind, if you could just state your name for the record, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
My name is Santa Semito, and I live on Magnolia Street. And for all the respect I get for you guys, and for all the work you're putting into, I'd like to ask you guys, how do you expect me to pay $34,000?
Well, if you actually, if your assessment is $34,000.
Yeah, that's what you guys gave me the last time I was
Sure.
here.
You would actually automatically qualify for the partial deferment. So your $34,000 is more than 25% more than the average, which is 19,000 and some change. So you would qualify for a partial deferment of the difference between your assessment, which is the 34,000, and the 19,000. So basically, you can defer that interest-free until you sell or transfer the property. So your assessment then lowers to the average, which is 19,000 and some odd change. I forgot the exact number. So that would be your assessment that is put on your tax roll, and that comes out to about $1,400 annually on your tax roll. And so the rest of the difference between the 34 and the 19 would be deferred. It would be placed on a lien on your property, and if or when you do sell the property or transfer it, then that amount becomes due. But it stays there interest-free.
I understand all that, but I hope you know that I don't make the same amount of money that you do. So my vote is no. Thank you.
I appreciate your comment. Thank you. Sir. Folks, I just want to make sure that you understand that our city staff is here to make sure we walk through this process with you as it relates to your specific situation. So if there are opportunities for us to advise you of deferment opportunities or other financing opportunities that might lessen that financial burden, we're here to help. So I hope you'll take that with the spirit that it's giving and know that staff are available to assist at any time. Sir.
Hi, my name is Guillermo Sanchez. I own one of the corner houses on George and Mulberry, which I think is going to be one that's going to get a lot of work. I'm a single income father, family of 5, and I make more money than the assistant program allows, and I can see this being a big hardship for our family. Right now, inflation has gone up on everything, gas, food, everything. Even though I make way more than what is considered low income, we're still check to check. I think there should be you should raise the threshold for what's considered low income. I think that's, living in Newark, Bay Area, it's extremely expensive, and we're barely surviving. So my request is that, I'm all for the improvements. I think they're needed, but I think what's being asked of us is way too much.
And again, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to sit down with city staff and kind of explain to them what your specific situation is and see if there's other opportunities out there for the city to assist or other financing opportunities that you might want to look into. I don't know if you've had the opportunity.
Yeah, but I just think to use the general Alameda County or California criteria for what's low income is not apples to apples with the rest of California. Living in Newark is an expensive Bay Area. You should have a factor in there for that and increase the threshold.
Yeah, so the low-income housing threshold is actually, just to clarify, I'm not saying whether it's accurate to your situation or not, but it is for Alameda County. So the numbers are developed by the California State Housing and Urban Development, but it's specific for Alameda County.
Right, but it's not a fair criteria to set assistance for, especially in Newark.
Thank you for your comment. I appreciate it. Other folks? Yes, ma'am.
As much as I like Jason Imai and respect him, I have to say that I really feel it is unfair that for those of us in the neighborhood, and I know quite a few of them, that have been buying our homes for 20, 30, 40 years. And now in the end, we're going to have a lien put on our property that may already be paid off from the city. Yes, a deferment, whether you're low income or whatever, it's still a bill that will need to be paid when we sell the home or when it's a bill. And it's a bill that could, if we want to do it annually, could be as much as $1,400 on average on our property tax. I mean, if you have to say, do you want to pay $1,400 more on your property tax starting now? No, everybody would say no. And yes, it is going to improve the area, but it's a sidewalk. I mean, my neighbor walks every day and she says she's fine with the sidewalk that's there. It works for her. You know, and so we're going to put a new sidewalk that people walking or other people can enjoy. But that amount of money, like the other speaker said, I mean, eggs, milk, bread, gasoline has gone way up, and there's no showing that it's going to come down. We may be paying more. And now we have to look forward to a lien be put on our property. It's a lien, it's a bill. And it's asking for us to pay more money on something that we may already own or have been paying on for 20 years. You know, it's like saying, you have that nice suit, Mayor. Can you give me another $1,400 a year for it? Even though you already own it and have it. I mean, I don't know that that's a good analogy, but I think it's overall a hardship, and that no matter what, you're asking for more money. And we just don't have it. And it's, you know, the way the inflation is, it's not gonna get any better. So I oppose this and am really saddened that we should have to go through this and be burdened. And I hope it doesn't even go to vote. I mean, all the people I've talked to in our neighborhood, they oppose it. Nobody wants to pay more money for anything. We may have to all be in electric cars and not have a gas stove. All these things we have to look at as a reality, and we're asking, let's put a nice sidewalk and pay more money for that.
Could I trouble you for your name for the record, ma'am?
Sandra Mascardo. And I
Sandra.
completely own my property, so I really don't want to now put on another burden.
Well, again, not sure what the council's going to do tonight, but the key item that you mentioned, if you are opposed to this, and it sounds like a number of residents are, please make sure you take the time to vote, because unless you vote, it's not going to have an impact on what the council's going to do on March the 23rd. So the voting is important, so please make sure you take advantage of that opportunity, okay?
Absolutely. My understanding was that if enough people opposed it, of course, not everybody showed up, but that they wouldn't even proceed to a February vote. That, I mean, it's a burden. It's going to be a burden. It's homeowners that have lived there for years, or their new residents. But the people that have been there for years, this is a hardship. Right now, everybody's going through a hardship. People are complaining about the cost of eggs, and it's not $1,400, but it could be as much as $4,000. I mean, it's absolutely not doable for us.
I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just, Mr. Amai, just for those that are watching from home, or what would happen if the vote were to be not to proceed? I would imagine that would simply mean that the improvements that we've described to the benefit of the community just simply wouldn't occur. Is that my understanding?
That would be up to the discretion of the council. Staff would make a recommendation, but historically, yes. You know, if we look back at similar projects that happened in the past, a no vote happened, I think, 3 times on Birch Street, just a block away from here. And Birch Street currently doesn't have any curb gutter or formal sidewalks because the residents expressed their.
And I understand the financial impact to residents looking at an assessment, but can you quantify what the enhanced value to a single-family home is as a result of the improvements that you described? Have we calculated what that increased value to the property owner might be?
You mean increased value in property value?
Right, in terms of these improvements having taken place.
We have not calculated that, but the engineer's report that Francisco and Associates have prepared calculated as the numbers that Mr. Espinoza spoke to, estimated the benefits, the primary and the enhanced benefits that would be realized.
About 38,000?
Yeah, if you want to add in, do you want to add anything to that, Ed?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mr. Mayor. So Prop 218 says that in terms of benefit, you can't assign assessments on the basis of just that property values will go up. You have to identify tangible benefits. And so that's what we've done in the engineer's report. We've identified tangible benefits, to the neighborhood as a whole and also individual properties. But the reasonable assumption, and I think the expectation, is that as a result of those benefits, property values will go up. I mean, I think it's reasonable to assume that.
Possibly
Yeah.
beyond the tangible benefit that you've defined.
Possibly, yes.
Okay.
And, a lot of that is
Sure.
obviously market and that kind of thing, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Other public comments?
How much interest are they gonna charge us on there?
Could you mind? We want to make sure we get your question, and if you wouldn't mind stating your name, I'd appreciate it.
My name's Marietta Medeiros.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
My parents bought my house in 1953.
Oh, outstanding.
On
So
Mulberry
before
Street.
we were a city.
Huh?
Before we were a
Yeah.
city.
Yeah. And so anyway, I'd like to know how much interest they're gonna charge us on this, and probably you would never pay it off. You know what I mean? I mean, young people are buying these houses, or they own them now, or buying them now. That's like a credit card bill. You owe that much money, $90,000 or whatever, especially me. I mean, I have a corner lot. How much is a corner lot gonna charge us? Not no 19,000.
It would be corner lots if, again, if your assessment is 25% more than the average, which is 19,000, you would qualify for a partial deferment of your assessment. So the difference between your assessment, say your assessment is $35,000. The difference between the $35,000 and the 19,000 would be deferred, interest-free, until you sell the house.
I don't care about selling. I mean, I don't want that burden over me. You know what? I'm happy the way I'm living now. Why don't you guys just leave us alone? You know? You know
I wanna
what?
make sure-
Years ago, they had these buildings, right? And they're there for 100 years. They don't knock them down. Nowadays, they knock them down. Look what they did to our city hall. And built this ugly thing. You know? No. This just doesn't work with older people.
I want to make sure we answer your question. Your question was, what would be the interest that would be charged?
Yeah.
Do you know that answer to that?
Yeah, the estimate is 5%, but the actual interest won't be known until, the time of bond sale. But the estimates, according to the city's financial advisor, I believe is 5%.
Okay. Thank you.
Relieved. Yeah, that's,
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you for, by the way, thank you for coming.
I'm against it.
Thank you. Other resident comments, please.
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Rosemary Gaunt, and I've lived in my home for 65 years. I'm a widow. This assessment is not easy to take, especially for where we live. The problem with the water was caused by the city. We were an established tract in the very beginning. Years later, people moved in. The city said, oh, all our homes are at this level. These new people that are moving in now, you have to raise the ground. You have to be up higher. So the empty lot that had been empty for years next to me, a gentleman moved in, he had to raise his property, the land. He brought in dirt and filled it. And then they told him he had to put a retaining wall. Well, guess what? After all these years, of course, the retaining wall doesn't hold. The water, this last storm we had, I had water in my backyard that deep. The man on the other side of me, same thing. We've got all these things that wasn't our fault. That was the city's rule. And so that something's wrong there. Somebody's got to do a little research. I think Mr. Freitas has been around here long enough, he knows some things about this. And secondly, I would sure like to know more about how the Birch Street was able to stop it, and how can we stop ours? It takes guts to come up here and talk. I really didn't want to, but I listened to them, and, you know, this is silly. I would like to see the water district take care of the water, but a lot of this was not our fault. The city caused it. Anybody there could, I'm the oldest one there. I moved in, I was a brand new bride, and now I'm the oldest one there. And so, and a lot of the houses are rentals. One gentleman has 7 rentals on his property. Another one's got 5. I mean, it just isn't fair. And I think you should tell us how we can do exactly what the people on Birch Street did. Because their street is nice. I know people that live on Birch. They may not have curbs and gutters, sidewalks. You don't need it. You go to Carmel. Carmel does not have sidewalks. I think Carmel sets a very good example. We don't need that. We just need somebody to stop and think a little more and just put all this up here. No, people can't digest all this so quickly. They need to print it out, take it home, take it to an attorney and study it. But I think you're going to have to do a little bit more before we vote.
Well, I want to thank you for being a longtime Newark resident. Thank you for having the courage to come up here. Other public comments? I can't speak to the Birch Grove neighborhood. I would imagine similar situation occurred.
It was right here off of Thornton.
I would imagine any other neighborhood that decided not to proceed with an assessment did exactly what you folks are doing. They got out and talked to their neighbors, said, I don't see a benefit to our community for us to do this, and we need to vote no. I see a lot of benefits to our community for this. We're really working hard to we're working hard to beautify all of our neighborhoods and make it easier for folks to walk neighborhoods. We have a lot of folks that are senior citizens that you have an uneven sidewalk or whatever the case may be, it becomes a little bit scary for folks. So we're trying to, make this a real walkable neighborhood, something that all of our residents feel safe. If you're pushing a child in a carriage, that you're not having to deal with uneven pavement, things of that nature. So this is the opportunity, and we're glad to hear from you folks tonight, but I think staff has laid out kind of what the options are. It's going to come back to the council in March, and at that time we'll take a tally of the votes, and if the majority of the votes are not to proceed, then I think that's a pretty clear direction to this council what the view of the neighborhood is.
Are we going to have ballots to vote?
Ballots will be sent to every property owner in the area. Okay? Every property owner will get a ballot. And I'm sorry, refresh my memory. What day would those ballots go out after? I would imagine that would be after the.
If council initiates proceedings for the assessment district, so then we have how many days after?
45, they have to be mailed out. The notices and ballots have to be mailed out a minimum of 45 days ahead of the public hearing, and the public hearing is scheduled for March 23rd. So our target mail date is next Friday, February 3rd.
So let's assume for a moment I'm a citizen and I'm anticipating that a ballot's going to show up to my property about the 10th of February. I'm just going to pick a random date. If I don't have a ballot in hand as a property owner, I would imagine I can contact the city, let them know I live in this neighborhood, I have not received my ballot, I'm interested in voting, and accommodations would be made to make sure we get a ballot to that resident.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
So kind of use that as your guide, folks. If they're going to go out around the 3rd of February, if you don't have a ballot by February the 10th, be proactive, contact the city, let them know you haven't received your ballot and you're interested in voting. And that's how democracy works, okay? Any other speakers? Ms. Harrington, is there anybody on Zoom that would like to speak to this item?
Yes, Your Honor, we have Gabriel Fonseca.
Hello?
Gabriel, you have 5 minutes. Please proceed.
Okay, hi. I live on George on the corner house, and I think I had heard something. I have a couple questions about the corner house maybe having more weight on the votes. And also, I was just wondering, because I don't really see the sidewalks being like puddles and stuff. It's mostly on the street. So can we just fix the street instead of the sidewalks also? Is one of the questions I had. But yeah, thank you.
I can answer that.
Sure.
Okay, so there's two questions. One, does the corner lot vote count more? So as Mr. Espinoza mentioned, your vote is weighted based on the amount of your property's assessment. So say your assessment is 2 times as much as your neighbor's. Well, your vote is going to count 2 times as much as your neighbor's vote. So it's weighted based on your amount of your assessment. So the more your assessment, the more heavily your vote is weighted towards the final count. The second question is, can we just leave the sidewalk and fix the streets? Well, one of the main causes of the ponding out there is the slope is too flat. So there's no longitudinal slope or flow to allow the stormwater on the road to drain over the surface to the inlets. So this project will actually basically gut the street. You'll get a brand new street because we do have to reprofile the road, and that's why it's going to be higher or lower in certain areas. So just fixing, that's why the city hasn't made the decision to fix the road in the past, so much years, because if you fix the road, the drainage problem doesn't get solved, and you'll have ponding, and ponding on water is just the enemy of pavement. So if you have the ponding on the new pavement, it's just going to deteriorate a lot faster. So in order to fix the problem, you're literally gutting the road and building a brand new road with brand new sidewalks to fix the slopes to allow the water to get into the drainage facilities better.
Thank you. Sheila, is there anyone else on Zoom that would like to speak?
No, Your Honor.
Great. I'm going to go and close the public hearing on this item and return it back to my council colleagues for any comments, questions? Councilmember Bucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of information. When this project first came to council several months ago, we started kind of talking about it. I voiced a lot of the concerns that the residents voiced tonight. After seeing some of the details of the proposed assessment amounts, I'm more concerned as ever. I share a lot of their concerns. I live not in the Lindsay, but on the opposite side of Cherry, over right behind the grocery outlet in a similar track. And I can tell you that our neighborhoods have, since I've lived here in 1985, have always been working class and lower income neighborhoods. And to have even an average of $1,400 a year, but up to $4,000 a year is a huge burden. I agree 100%. I think there isn't anybody, any reasonable person that thinks that that money won't be passed along to renters. So it's great that, some of the owner occupants have opportunities at breaks, but anybody renting is certainly going to feel the pinch of that because it's just going to get passed right along because that's the way it works with all of these things. The year's assessment, we already just got a raise in our yearly property taxes for a BART property tax. We don't even have a BART in Newark, but here we are paying for it. So, I'll be honest with you, and I agree a lot with Mr. Sanchez. I'm a working class tradesman as well, so I understand, that some of these numbers are a little outrageous, and even 76,000. It's crazy to hear it and to think about it that they consider that low income. But when you look at any other number of reports, they say anywhere from 90 to 110,000 is low income in Alameda County now. So this misses the mark by quite a bit. Ms. Yount brought up a great point about the flooding in her backyard during the recent things, and that is certainly something we want to address. I've seen the flooding over there, but I agree that I don't like the assessment plan. I think it puts a little too much burden on the residents. And, Going forward with this breakout. One other point I'd like to make is the actual work. The 56 average square feet is $1,867, and the 50 or linear feet of curb and gutter is $49.41. So we're looking at right around $7,000. But by the time you put on the fees, the assessment district, the bonding, and everything else, that number grows to $18,000. That's $11,000 more than the actual work costs. I mean, I have a hard time digesting that, and I completely understand why other people do as well. I think the city can do a better job. I think we can come back with something a little more palatable if we're going to ask our residents to assist with it, and I'm probably not going to support it as it's written.
Other comments?
So I guess one more,
Councilmember Jorgens.
one more clarifying question for me on the vote, because, to me, this should be a decision of the, residents of that neighborhood. Is there a threshold that it needs to meet of a certain number of people casting votes? How does that work?
No, it's the ballots that are returned. So we don't have to have a minimum number of ballots returned for the vote to take place.
So if this comes back to us on the 23rd, and we're looking at it and there was very low participation with the vote, will that be something that we're aware of? Will we see
The vote,
percentage of
yeah,
the
so
assessment that was able to vote?
excuse me, I'm sorry for interrupting. Apologies. The ballots will be counted right here that evening live. We will be literally opening up envelopes that evening. So you will know exactly how much ballots we returned. We can tell you there's 144 total properties, so we'll know how much of that 144 was returned that night.
Councilmember Bucci.
Thank you. Just one more question about the balloting, and just to make sure I'm clear. We got 144 units that don't all balance equally, right? Because they're weighted based off the assessment. So when we count them that night, the count might not even give us a real total. Will the total balance be a part of each ballot?
Staff will be prepared with a spreadsheet that we will fill out that will calculate the weighted vote per the assessment. So it will take time to count. It's not going to be a simple, one for yes, two for no. One, you have to do. It's an analysis that has to happen that evening, but we'll be prepared to do that analysis that night. And I think our Mr. Espinoza has something to add.
Yeah, so Councilmember Bucci, each ballot will actually have a barcode on there, and so the barcode is specifically tied to that APN, that parcel. Each parcel has its own proposed assessment. And so that night, as your assistant city manager or city engineer, I keep giving you a raise or a promotion, Jason. Sorry. So that evening of the public hearing, we will tabulate the ballots. We're going to scan every ballot which has a proposed assessment. And so yes, at the end, it's dollars. It's like you said. Each ballot is not even. It's all based on the proposed assessment amount and majority based on that.
Okay. I guess my last question about the ballot is, and you used some language that wasn't very clear. So I believe you said that if we don't have enough people opposing it, it will pass. Not that enough people supported it, which is kind of the inverse. It makes me think that means we have to hit a certain threshold of people who say no, and if people who don't turn in their ballots, that actually a no vote almost counts as a yes vote. Is that accurate?
No, and I'll call up Mr. Espinoza too. For that
I want to make sure that we're clear on that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So the Prop 218, it's majority protest proceedings. And essentially what that means is majority have to be in opposition in order for it to not go through, or rather city council not have the authorization to approve it. So if it's a tie, If it's, based on proposed assessment amount, if it's a tie, in theory, city council has the authority to form the district, or nobody votes. Technically, in theory, there was no majority protest. So it is a majority protest proceeding, and that's why, and I think the language you were describing is worded that way in the slide. Majority oppose the formation of the district.
Okay, so I just want to make clear for everybody here that is a total count of ballots turned in, and that anybody of those 144 units that doesn't send it, 44 people don't send their ballots in, then we're only grading off of those 100.
Only return ballots count are tabulated. So if you don't vote, it doesn't, if you don't submit a ballot, it does not count. So it's a tabulation of the returned ballots only, yes.
Last question. Anybody who's done an ADU or added an address to the back of their house, do they then get 2 votes? One for each one, or is it that main property assessment?
I don't believe so. It's the property, the parcel. It's the one
parcel.
vote per parcel.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Jorgens.
Is the vote binding? So if it returned yes, because I share many of the concerns brought up, if the vote came back yes, but it was a very low turnout, would we as a council be able to, say, okay, let's go back and, to some step of this process to make sure that there's, actual support from the community, not just from this small percentage that turned in a ballot?
I can answer that. So yes, this council would still have the option of not assessing or forming the district and levying the first assessments. But the opposite, if the vote is no, if there's a majority protest, you cannot levy this, form the district.
So the only action that we're taking tonight, in all honesty, and I'm going to support staff's recommendation, is basically giving the vote to the community. That's all we're doing. We're not making a decision tonight on whether or not the assessment proceeds or does not proceed. That's really up to the community. I support the public improvements that will be made to this part of our city because I think it's to the benefit of the residents that live there today and future residents of that neighborhood to have good streets, quality sidewalks for them and their families, especially as we deal with a residential base that's getting older, including the mayor. So I'm going to support this, again, because it, again, returns the vote to those that live in the neighborhood. So with that being said, I'm looking for a motion on staff's recommendation.
I'll make a motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Councilmember Jorgens. I'm looking for a second. I'll second that motion. Please vote. Do I need to go back?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't see it on my screen.
Start voting. I'm sorry. To become just a member of the audience. And that carries, it does not pass on 2 ayes, an abstention, and a no vote. So that item does not pass. Am I correct, Mr. Benoon?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. The council at this point would be prohibited, from going forward on this project. We would, of course, be free to reevaluate it at a future time and come back with alternative proposals. But absent a 3-member council vote, the city would be unable to proceed as planned. The existing municipal code does require that 3 council members affirmatively vote to take action, and hence the reason here why we only have 2, so therefore this would not allow the city as presented this evening.
Thank you. I do want to take a moment before we move on to the next item to thank all the members of the community that took time out of their busy day to show up and have their voice heard. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is to adopt a resolution terminating the local emergency due to COVID-19 effective February 28, 2023. My understanding is that both Vice Mayor Collazo and Councilmember Freitas will each need to recuse themselves from participating. Vice Mayor Collazo?
Under the Political Reform Act, I have an economic conflict of interest in this item. I have real property interest and business interest. Source of income interest in the Mexico Tortilla Factory at 7015 Thornton Avenue and rental properties at 7155, 7167, and 7179 Thornton Avenue, and a rental property at 36805 Magnolia Street. So I need to recuse myself one more time.
Councilmember Freitas.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, I am on. Okay, microphone. Under the Political Reform Act, I have an economic conflict of interest on this item. I have an interest on this item related to real property interests that are a resource of income to me. I am the owner of residential units which I rent to tenants located at 37082 Spruce Street, 37220 Magnolia Street, and 7968-7972 Thornton Avenue. I will recuse myself from consideration of this item.
Thank you, Councilmember Freitas. I feel like we have a hole up here at the dais.
It's COVID distancing.
City Manager Benoon.
Yes, good evening, Your Honor, and remaining members of the council. If you may recall, in October of last year, Governor Newsom announced his intention to terminate California's COVID-19 state of emergency at the end of next month, largely in part to the lack of COVID-19 hospitalizations and deaths. City staff agrees with the governor's approach, and we therefore recommend that the city terminate Newark's declaration of emergency. I'd like to provide some brief background and context. Almost 3 years ago, on March 16th, 2020, in my capacity as Director of Emergency Services, I declared a local emergency in response to the then rapidly evolving COVID-19 pandemic. The next day, the City Council ratified the local emergency as required by the city's municipal code. That same day, an unprecedented shelter-in-place order was issued by various Bay Area County health officers, took aggressive steps to minimize the spread of the virus in our community. State rules were then also adopted. Bans were imposed, prohibiting the operation of many local businesses, including restaurants, gyms, nail salons, and hair salons. Other businesses were significantly restricted to include only activities that were deemed essential. In addition, various face mask orders were also issued. Throughout the 3 years of this pandemic, the council ratified the local emergency at least every 60 days as required by the city's municipal code. The purpose of declaring a local emergency is to allow the city to issue emergency rules and regulations related to the preservation of life and property and to mobilize resources, whether it be to call in a city employee to serve as a disaster service worker or to request resources from other jurisdictions such as the county, state, or federal government. These workers would then need to address any, quote, actual or threatened existence of conditions of disaster of extreme peril to the safety of persons and property within this city. At no point during the local emergency has the city mobilized such resources. Furthermore, circumstances have significantly changed since March of 2020. A vaccine for COVID-19 is now readily available for people of all ages. We have better awareness of how COVID-19 is spread. Hospitalizations and deaths are much lower. There is sufficient healthcare capacity to address the pandemic. And perhaps most significantly, federal, state, and county regulations have substantially eased, if not eliminated. And this, of course, includes the lifting of mask mandates, except for very limited circumstances. So, while COVID-19 will be with us for some time, conditions of disaster or extreme peril do not appear to be present. The most significant impact for terminating our local emergency is that it would result in the automatic revocation of 3 temporary ordinances that the council approved in 2020 as part of this emergency. That includes the eviction moratorium, the COVID-19 use permit, and the 15% third-party delivery fee cap. I'm going to go ahead and address each one in turn. The eviction moratorium allows commercial and residential tenants to defer the payment of rent if they are unable to do so due to income loss related to COVID-19. The tenant is obligated to inform their landlord of their inability to pay rent as a result of COVID-19 and provide documentation to support that claim. The tenant is not relieved of the obligation to pay rent. Following the end of the eviction moratorium, equal payments of 25% of past due rent are due in 45-day intervals, with balance due within 6 months. The eviction moratorium allows deferral until the expiration of local emergency, the expiration of the state emergency, or May 31st, 2020, whichever is later. At the time that the council adopted the eviction moratorium, many businesses, such as gyms, hair and nail salons, restaurants that had exclusively in-person dining, and others were entirely prohibited from operating as a result of the shelter-in-place orders. Indeed, the unemployment rate for our county in the beginning of the pandemic was at 13.5%, but has since returned to pre-pandemic levels of 3.1%. I would like to highlight the city has implemented considerable measures to mitigate the loss of local businesses. That includes injecting millions of dollars into the local economy through various grant programs, hosting several financial resiliency workshops in multiple languages, giving specialized advice to businesses in one-on-one settings, and hosting a digital marketing seminar series for businesses that were shut down the longest. Because of our collective efforts, many of these businesses have been able to survive. At this point, staff is aware of 14 businesses that have back due rent, which is a marked improvement from the 41 businesses that had back due rent 1 year ago. Should the local emergency be lifted, we would advise those businesses of the termination of the eviction moratorium and advise them to continue to address back due rent with their landlord and offer further particularized business advice. Turning to the COVID-19 use permit ordinance, that ordinance allows staff to issue use permits to authorize business operations without any fees and waive other requirements under our zoning code. During the height of the pandemic, the city issued 17 such permits. At this point, we are aware of only 3 businesses that still use that permit. When this ordinance was enacted, the county and state had significant restrictions that impacted restaurants, hair and nail salons, and gyms and others. Those restrictions have since been lifted, and there are no regulatory limitations on the pre-pandemic operations of those businesses. The city's existing zoning code already contains a process to allow for outdoor business operations. If our local emergency ends, then businesses can file an application with the city, pay the necessary fee, provide a parking analysis if required, and request issuance of a building permit. In other words, there would be no need to modify the existing municipal code. Should the local emergency expire, then we would notify the 3 businesses that rely on the use permit to apply for a permanent permit under the zoning code. The last ordinance that would be impacted would be the 15% third-party delivery fee cap. This ordinance limits the fees that a third-party delivery service provider can charge to Newark restaurants. This ordinance was enacted when there were severe restrictions on restaurant operations. At that time, indoor dining was prohibited, and at some point, it was introduced, but at very limited capacity. Additionally, as much was still unknown about COVID-19 in the early stage of the pandemic, and many residents were simply uncomfortable with going into restaurants to pick up their takeout orders, and thus they relied on these third-party delivery service providers. That is simply not the case anymore. Restaurants are fully opened, and there are no restrictions on indoor dining. All 3 of these ordinances were temporary and taken as emergency measures in response to the rapidly evolving COVID-19 crisis. Early on in the pandemic, a significant number of residents and businesses suffered lost income. The world is significantly different today than it was nearly 3 years ago when these steps were taken. Local businesses were able to survive in part because of the substantial steps the city has taken to prevent closures. I commend and thank the Newark City Council for their leadership in enacting these ordinances. Only about half of our cities in our county adopted a moratorium to protect commercial tenants, and not all cities enacted the 15% delivery cap. In addition, the council authorized millions of dollars in assistance and direct support to our local businesses, which was quickly implemented by city staff, particularly our economic development team as led by Ms. Ann Stedler, and our finance team as led by Director Lee. Finally, I'd like to publicly acknowledge and thank all of city staff for their tremendous work the past several years. When this pandemic hit, we not only reimagined how the city provides services and conducts business, but we also took immediate steps to safeguard our community, including enforcing county health orders, hosting food drives, and distributing PPE to our community. I'm also particularly grateful of the city's executive and leadership team for their tremendous work. They made a commitment at the onset of this pandemic to serve our community, and they have done so admirably the past 3 years, and so I thank them. This concludes staff's presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Not a question, Mr. Benin, but really a comment. And you highlighted it towards the end. Just real thanks to the city staff for all the hard work that you did as we tried to navigate a pandemic to which many of us knew its implications early on. How many businesses were able to stay open because of the financial aid we gave them? I've visited, as I'm sure my colleagues have, haircut places and other businesses that are only in business today because of the financial help that we provided them. So not only did we save businesses from closing, but we saved jobs. So there were so many benefits that we received as a result of the actions that this council took. The waiver of some of the zoning requirements, because you recall early on in the pandemic, you couldn't go into a restaurant. They were closed. And so we did everything within our ability to try to keep these businesses open by expanding some of the use permit requirements. And in many cases, many restaurants survived as a result of these actions. So real thanks to the council and the staff and Ms. Stedler for you and your group for really being proactive. You know, we didn't wait for folks to come to us and let us know what their needs were. We met with them, made a determination as to how can we help you, and we're able to deliver, saving countless numbers of businesses from closing and people from being laid off. Other council comments before I open it up to the public? Mr. Bucci, Councilmember Bucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple questions real quick. I know the state has lifted their emergency order. Is that lifting February 28th? Is that?
That's correct. It expires midnight on that day.
Okay. Have we heard anything about what the county's doing?
Mr. Cocatello,
I know that they are considering it, but it's a unique circumstance there that, so they have not set a date. I'll say that. They have not set a date.
Okay.
That's correct.
Is it premature for us as a city to be lifting our order in a county that hasn't lifted their order yet?
I think they're independent decisions. I wouldn't necessarily say one way or the other. I think they're two independent decisions that could be made by two separate governing bodies without any consequence to one another. I don't know if the city attorney has any particular thought on that, but that would be my impression.
Yeah, I think that's a great point by Mr. Benoon. You know, in terms of the cities, you know, the county with a public health agency has other considerations in terms of what they evaluate as to the emergency, and of course they're looking countywide, not just in the city of Newark, whereas our lens is really just within the city boundaries.
Okay.
So it is a different analysis, that's correct.
Okay, and then I guess my last concern here would be, you know, the pandemic really boosted the outdoor dining that I know a lot of people like and a lot of restaurants like. You know, I would hate to see this expire on February 28th and then code enforcement go out on March 1st and immediately start dropping the hammer on people about the outdoor dining. So I'm just curious if we have a plan for that, or maybe how much, if there's a timeline and when we're gonna reach out to them and how much time we're gonna allow them to actually start to make a decision if they would like to continue and file for a permit.
If the council took action tonight, I would imagine we would write to them as early as next week, informing them of their ability to apply for a permit under the city's existing process in the zoning code. As I said earlier, there's only 3 businesses that rely on this, so I assume we'd be able to get that letter out pretty quickly, early next week, I would imagine.
And those are discretionary permits, aren't they, Mr. Benoon?
Are they, no, they're non-discretionary? Yeah, they're ministerial in
I'm
nature.
sorry, ministerial, thank you.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I mean, it's not outrageous to say we would give everybody 30 days, right, till April 1st to maybe turn them in and figure out what they're gonna do.
I can't.
I'd just like to
can't imagine.
quantify it somehow to make sure that they have a fair amount of time to make a decision, so.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
And I would
This
imagine, I'm sorry,
No.
Councilmember,
Mr.
to
Mayor,
interrupt.
go ahead.
I would imagine a ministerial permit, if somebody were to come to the office in the next day or two, a decision can be made fairly quickly based on the information that they provide.
I think it depends on the circumstances. Some may require parking analysis. In fact, one business, I believe, has already submitted an application for this type of permit, but I'm going to defer to our community development director.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Stephen Turner, Community Development Director. Yes, it's a ministerial process. For small outdoor dining patios, there's very little requirements for establishing those. For patios that are over a certain size, 500 square feet, you have to show that you're providing parking spaces for that extra outdoor dining area. That's usually done with a parking analysis in conjunction with the property owner to determine that there's enough parking on site. With that information, and through the building permit process, if they need to build structures relating to that outdoor patio, they can apply for a building permit at that time. It does take some time to go through that process, but it's relatively straightforward and ministerial. Really no discretion as long as the rules are being followed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turner.
So I think to follow up on your comment, Councilmember Bucci, I would imagine if we take the action tonight, my expectation is, as outlined by the city managers, that staff will be notifying these businesses over the next 24, 48 hours. Council's taking this action. Here's an application for you to submit an application for a permit to expand your business to include that outdoor area. So I think we'll be proactive, that's what I'm hearing from you, Mr. Benoon, to reach out to those businesses. Okay.
Okay, perfect. And then my last thing was just, I wanted to thank Ms. Stedler while we were here for all your work over the last couple of years, not just with the grant programs and the outreach, and that work has all been outstanding, but especially things like the financial literacy program that I've heard people who have gone through it and they've raved about it. And I think things like that are going to help folks long past the pandemic, right? I'm hoping things get back to normal, but lessons learned from those classes will hopefully take them into a fruitful future. So kudos. Give yourself lots of pats on the back because your whole team did a great job, and we all recognized it, so thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Jorgens.
Yeah, so I want to follow up on a couple of items that Councilmember Bucci brought up as well. So just to confirm, I guess, if we notify the business over the next week, that permitting process, they'll be able to have the permit in place by February 28th. There shouldn't be any.
We would look at a number of different factors. Certainly, the project description. We would want to look at the outdoor patio, what building permits might be required. We do want to confirm if it's a large patio that it's being constructed and located in a safe manner, good for emergency vehicle access, for ADA access. So there's still although there's very little discretion, there are some ministerial and requirements and regulations that do need to be followed when these patios are being proposed. We do want to look at the patios and the impacts both on the property and to adjacent property owners for this as well. So we want to make sure that they're operating safely and in conformance with all building codes that are established. And that does take some time to get through. So we can't guarantee that outdoor patios would be permitted after a certain date. But certainly we'll be willing to work with those business owners.
And then I was also curious about the county's deadline, because one of the things that's going to be a challenge is, people knowing that our ordinance is ending. And I'm noticing for folks that, with the eviction moratorium, do we have a way of contacting them, making it clear whether to renters or landlords who are under the ordinance right now that they won't be under the ordinance come March 1st?
You're talking in the commercial context, or you're talking in residential, or both?
Both.
So I think with respect to the commercial side, Ms. Stedler's got a very strong pulse of the business community. She would be able to reach out to them fairly early on, indicating that this moratorium is expiring. And as I indicated earlier, more than happy to offer particularized business advice. I think at this point, we have about, was it 7 businesses, I think I had indicated, that have some possible back due rent that would be affected by this ordinance. She'd be more than happy to reach out to them. The best piece of advice, of course, is to negotiate with the landlord. It's always the best interest of the parties to arrive at a mutual kind of decision. So she would reach out and be proactive with them immediately. As far as the residential side, the unemployment rate, as I indicated earlier, is 3.1%. I don't know if anybody from community development or economic development would like to speak as to the residential side.
Certainly. Yeah, we have less of an awareness of very specific households that are back behind on their rent. However, we do have information from the county's emergency rental assistance program. 335 households in Newark applied for rental assistance through the county. And at the end of the program, approximately 85 of those households had complete applications and were awarded assistance. Although I haven't checked with the county, there might be opportunities to work with them to be able to outreach to all of those households that did not receive a grant, to let them know about that the emergency order is over and here are your options. Their Echo Housing is the city's fair housing coordinator, and we often refer households who are negotiating or working with their landlords on rental issues to use Echo as a mediation service going forward. And they've been very effective in the past, and we expect them to be effective in the future.
That would be great if that could happen.
Sorry, if I could just add to that. My understanding is that the county's existing eviction moratorium ordinance still remains in place. Staff is unaware as to the timetable as to when that could potentially be revoked. But at this point in time, there is a county ordinance that does provide eviction relief for residential landlord-tenant relationships.
Great, thank you.
So let me ask a clarifying question based on that statement, Mr. Benoon. If we were to eliminate our local emergency here in the city of Newark, if the county proclamation remains in place, that would provide those tenants living in Newark additional protection until such time as the county were to lift their emergency order?
I would say that's a fair statement, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you. Anything we can do, Mr. Turner, and thank you for your comments, to reach out to tenants living in the city of Newark about the possibility that this is going to be lifted and any resources that we can provide to them. Certainly make sure we do that in multiple languages would be appreciated. Are there any residents that would like to speak to this item? Ms. Harrington, anybody on Zoom that would like to speak to this item?
No, Your Honor.
So the item before us is to basically lift the moratorium that we have in the city of Newark. Can I get a motion? Second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, made by Councilmember Bucci, seconded by Councilmember Jorgens.
It's a weird vote after.
No, it's pretty much in line with pandemic. That passes 3 ayes and 2 recusals. Thank you, colleagues, for your comments.
Resolution of the City Council of the City of Newark terminating local emergency due to COVID-19 effective February 23.
I'm sorry, I have to recuse myself.
So now we are at City Council matters, and I'm going to immediately turn to my colleague on my right, Vice Mayor Susie Collazo.
You just didn't want to forgive me this time, right? Well, I just want to say that what a beautiful couple of days we've had. Hope you guys all were out enjoying them. We have another nice day tomorrow and Saturday. Sunday, expect a little bit more rain. And it's going to be cold again, so get your long johns out again. But have a wonderful, wonderful week. Enjoy the game this Sunday. And whatever you're going to do, make sure you shop Newark for all your goodies.
Thank you. Councilmember Bucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kind of speak on the topic of pandemic, the Ohlone Wildlife Rehabilitation Center shut down during pandemic time, and they've been trying to get reopened. They have to make a few improvements over there. So I'll be leading a work party next Saturday, February the 4th. We're going to get about 10 folks out there, and we're going to do some improvements so they can start rescuing birds and other Newark wildlife again. So if anybody is interested in chipping in and helping out, it's going to take us about 6 hours, right? Many hands make for easy work. So send me an email, and we'd love to have you there helping us hang tarps and make some other improvements for them. So it'd be nice to get them back up and operational again.
And where do you want people to meet and at what time?
So you can either email or we'll put it out, but we will be at the Ohlone Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, which is
Hickory?
Hickory, thank you. I was just drawing a blank. I was just there, behind the World Pack warehouses. And I imagine we'll start about 9 a.m. So we'll get out of there about 2 or 3. So I think about 5 or 6 hours of work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Jorgens.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I'd like to bring up an issue of concern that I've had about different reports of an unfriendly odor in the Birch Grove neighborhood. And just wondering, what should residents do if they smell something? You know, how do they go about reporting that, and what happens once a report is filed?
Sure. You're asking in regards to potentially safety clean, is that?
Potentially any kind of odor that might raise a safety issue, whether it's one area or another. If there's an odor of concern, how should that be reported?
Sure. So a few things. I think if any resident or any community member smells some sort of odor, if it smells like natural gas, they should obviously leave the area, immediately call 911, and Alameda County Fire Department would then be dispatched. If necessary, they would coordinate with PG&E, and they would go out and conduct an investigation. If there's non-natural gas smells that are certainly not pleasant, there is a process to file complaints. There's an entity that regulates odors, and that's called the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. They do have a website, they do have a complaint line. Residents can call that line, and depending on where their resources are and how available they are, they will send an investigator out to investigate. And those smells can range the gamut. If they are industry related, they'll certainly go out and investigate, or if they're just simply not pleasant odors, they will go out and investigate. City staff is also available as well, although city, of course, does not maintain any jurisdiction over those types of complaints. We did receive some complaints in November and December time period in a particular area in Newark. Did smell like natural gas, and we also received complaints of kind of an industrial burning rubber type of smell. And we've since put information on our website that explains that reporting process. Happy to provide the council with that link, but it should be there pretty easily accessible on our website.
Thank you.
Councilmember Freitas.
Not your honor tonight, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Benoon, we're going to have a celebration of Mayor Al Nagy's 42 years, 9 months serving the residents of Newark, and that is scheduled for?
That is scheduled for Sunday, February 5th, between the hours of 1 p.m. and 4 p.m., with a program to begin inside these chambers at 1:15 p.m.
Certainly a opportunity, again, to thank Mayor Al Nagy for his many years of dedicated service to this community. So if you're available on that Sunday, there's no football that day, as I understand it.
That's correct.
Well planned. Please show up and extend thanks to Mayor Nagy for his service to our community. With that being said, there are no closed session items this evening. This meeting is adjourned.